I was playing the Sky Striker deck on the rank ladder when suddenly I ran into two virtual players back to back, and unsurprisingly, both of them summoned VFD turn 1. Now, what was surprising about those duels is by the end of them, my opponent had surrendered, and this was Platinum rank. So I want to walk you through the replays and kind of show you what happened and just have a good time with it. So if you enjoyed the video, please do consider liking it. It does help me out. Subscribe to the channel to get more gameplay videos like this, and let's get into the duels. Now, both of my opponent's decks were very competently built. This is an example of the first one, and he's actually running Imperial Order. He never saw it during the duel, and if he did, it might have been tricky, but we do have an out for it in my Sky Striker deck. So let's just get into the replays. I'll show you exactly how things went down. Okay, so starting hand, but my opponent is going first, and they're gonna do the whole VFD thing. Now, while my opponent's turn is taking place, I'll explain to you what my theorized out to Imperial Order is. I play one of the Ghost Spell hand traps that allows me to destroy a face-up card that activates its effect on the field. And so, generally speaking, I use it to destroy continuous spells and traps. Now, when Imperial Order does the 700 life point cost at the beginning of my opponent's standby phase and my standby phase, I do believe that counts as an activation, and Ghost Spell would be able to pop it in that situation, and it's limited once. So, if they draw their one-of card, I have two cards in my deck that can potentially play around it. Again, I've never actually done this in practice. It might not work that way. But that's just kind of what I've theorized my out to the card to be, because I'm not running traps in my build, right? So everything's happening as it should, as it would. My opponent's doing the whole song, and we can actually fast forward through this, right? I've played VFD before. I've played Virtual Worlds, and so when I see this shark, is that a cat? I don't know. It's something. When I see it on the field, I know that they're drawing cards so they can make another level 9, usually Shin. That way they can make VFD and detach Shin to the graveyard to activate its effect. That way Shin can summon itself onto the field next turn. So we've seen it all before, we've heard it all before, we know where this is going. They're doing the Virtual World song and dance. So True King hits the field face-up defense position. You always want to put it in defense, right? Just to avoid it being lightning vortex or anything like that. So my turn rolls around, and I don't really have anything to stop the Virtual World, the True King effect, right? So it goes through, they choose the attribute of light because they don't know what I'm playing yet. I Feather Duster off the bat, that way I can get rid of the trap, which would be able to, you know, destroy my monsters, all that good stuff. And then I start activating my spells. All of a sudden, I've got 3 cards in my graveyard, and so when I activate this card, Sky Striker, I forgot the name, it's called Sky Striker Sky Cannon. So I want to walk you through exactly what I decided to do, because this duel was heavily about decision making and knowing what to do. In some instances, some people might have searched out the card that pops cards on the field, right? They might have tried to take out the True King of all calamities for next turn, but my thought process was, okay, I've taken out the True King, then what, right? I'm trying to see how far I can go, because all of my effects on the field for this turn are negated. I don't Shizuku search, I don't get to Hayate attack directly, I don't get to do anything. I can't use my Kagari to recycle engage. So I'm like, okay, yes, I could get rid of the True King, but then what? I'm like, I might be better off yoinking this card from my opponent's graveyard, that way they don't get it on the field next turn, to allow them to have all my cards be banished and give them their optimal board state, right? So we continue from there. I get that card out, and I normal summon Ray. The reason why I don't link summon with Ray right off the bat is because my opponent is going to try and negate my monster effects on the field. I'm going to chain my Ray to the activation of their True King of all calamities. They try and draw cards, I Ash Blossom, that doesn't go through, and so they're playing the game as they should, right? They're doing the very best that they can. Now, they have Virtual World Beast on the field, and this card in hand to allow them to get more summons to go off. I'm not really too bothered about any of what's going on here. Well, I wouldn't say I'm not bothered. I am somewhat worried, but then I do know for a fact that as long as they haven't used the True King of all calamities yet, I'm chilling, right? Now, my opponent goes for another summon. They make the Break Sword, right? Now, this is where things get tricky, because they're going to destroy the Shin. Luckily, Shin says that it can only be summoned on the turn after it was sent to the graveyard, so they cannot summon the Shin from the graveyard this turn. They activate this Virtual World Beast card to try and destroy my Ray, and this is when I chain my effect to send myself to the graveyard and summon a Link monster. Now, they chain True King of all calamities, but I've already activated my effect. It's going to resolve despite the fact that they've done this. So this goes on backwards. It's all good, it's all fine. I summon a Shizuku onto the field to reduce my opponent's attack so I don't take as much damage. Now, the Rose in my hand The Rose in my hand is a light monster. My opponent negated dark effects. So had I wanted to, I could have summoned Rose onto the field to give myself an extra layer of protection. But doing some quick math, I know that my opponent does not have lethal, and I don't know what I'm going to top deck. I need to know that I can make myself a Kagari so I can get the card out of my graveyard, right? So I've taken some reduced damage here. They swing in. That True King is naked. It's useless now. It's got no materials left over. And so it's really just a question of how I want to go about skinning this cat, right? I drew an Ash Blossom. I'm very glad that I kept that Rose in hand. I can link some into a Kagari from my extra deck and get myself engaged in my graveyard. Now, I've got more than enough spells in my graveyard to satisfy the double activation requirements for our spells. Well, not double activation, but the extra abilities that we get. And now I decide to go with this. I decided to get myself a Widow Anchor. And this is what I love about Sky Strikers, is that there's so much decision making involved in piloting the deck. Different people would have played this completely differently. Like anyone, like there are so many different options and different routes that you can take. My thought process here is, okay, look, True King of all Calamities is just a 3K beater. Now, there's no point in trying to destroy it or get rid of it. But when it comes to these two cards, I'm not big enough to get over them right now. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to link summon into Kaina. You don't usually see Kaina be used actively for her effect, but I'm going to lock down their True King so they can't attack with it, and then steal their Virtual World card. Now, I gain some life points, and then I go into a Zeke, using the two cards that I have on the field to then banish the Break Sword. That way they've got a clear field for next turn, and then I link again into Hayate so I can start doing my standard Sky Striker plays. Like I'm taking control back of the board. Hayate isn't going to get swung into by that virtual card on the field next turn. And then for good measure, I link into Shizuku in main phase 2. Shizuku in the end phase is going to search my card for a Sky Striker card from my deck, and what's really, really cool is I can do this. The card that I choose to search out in the end phase is this one, right? I chose to get myself another copy of Shark Cannon, but I've turned my toggle on, so before the turn ends, it's a quick play effect. I can activate it to get my opponent's card out of the graveyard and summon it to my side of the field as an extra layer of protection. They're in a top deck situation. They don't get anything good here. They don't get anything good. They can't attack with their VFD, and so they scoop, and that's game 1. Okay, so game 2 is a little bit more straightforward in terms of why things went the way they did, but I still want to walk you through it. Now, in this game, my opponent opted to take the Max C challenge, right? Which against the deck, like he didn't know it was Sky Strikers at the time, but that's not a good idea. So I was very surprised to see that the very next duel as well was also against Virtual World. When it happened the first time, I was like, oh, maybe I just got lucky, but I had a chance to test it again. So I've activated Max C here, and you might think, okay, well, because you've activated Max C, there's no skill or anything involved, and like it's not down to Sky Strikers being good, it's down to the fact that you had all your cards in hand. Pay very close attention to what's in my hand before I start drawing, right? I've got myself a Widow Anchor, I've got myself a Ray, right? So we're in a position here to do quite a few things, and the very specific thing that helps us to out the True King of all Calamities is, well, it's already in motion, which you'll see as we proceed here. Can I just fast forward? We all know this. We all know the song and dance. Just watch my hand, see the things that I draw into as my opponent continues. Like they full send it. They're like, I'm making this True King. Like they did not give it them. I think that the assumption is, okay, well, True King can activate in the standby phase, so it doesn't matter what you draw into, because if you draw into like a kaiju or something like that, I'll have already activated my effect. Your effects will be negated for the entirety of your turn, and then I'll kill you on my next turn. It's probably what they're thinking, right? So maybe there's more that they could have done. Maybe there was more options that they had, but they've given me my entire deck. So they activate the True King of all Calamities at the start of my turn, and I chain the card that I already had, the Widow Anchor. I negate the effect of the True King, and just like that, it's a regular 3K beater. I can activate all my monster effects, and they've given me all of these cards. And it's really just a question of how I'd like to go about this. Now that they know that I'm playing Sky Strikers, they actually do something very intelligent, and that is they activated their Virtual World Gate right off the bat, because one of the Sky Striker cards specifically only lets me destroy set cards, like set spells and traps, and we don't have a card to destroy face-up spells and traps until we get all the cards we need in the graveyard. So that was actually a very good shout on their end, which as soon as they realized what deck I was playing, they decided to make that play. So they have a very good understanding of the game, like the game state, how my deck works and everything. But it's too late because you've given me all of these cards. So this card in my hand right now can't be used because they don't have any set cards. I activate Airspace and I chain Ray's effect to Airspace. So this is really cool. The card that you activate the card that you target to activate Airspace doesn't need to remain on the field. So if you target Ray and then jump off the field to summon a card, you still get that search off, so you don't have to minus any cards when searching your deck for more cards. I pick up another copy of Widow Anchor. Now, normally you save Kagari for when you've gotten engaged in the graveyard, but I feel like I'm gonna need that Widow Anchor again, because obviously, despite all of these cards that I have, Sky Strikers is not an OTK deck. I don't have lethal right now. So I go into Kaina, no particular reason, but I'm trying to fill up my graveyard a little bit while also getting more summons off. So I get Rose onto the field as well. The summon of that resolves. I've got Pot of Avarice in hand, so if I've got 5 cards in my graveyard, that's a draw too. But I want to try and maintain a Ray in my graveyard as well, so I want to get as many cards in there as I can, that way Ray gets to stay. I banish that card, the True King, because, why not? And then I can activate the pot in the graveyard. Now, this gets me back my hand traps as well, which is something that I really love about this card. You get your hand traps back, your monsters back, everything that you need. I get an Upstart Goblin. I've just drawn everything here. Like, it's almost not fair how many things, well, to be fair, it's their own fault for playing into the Maxi. I personally feel like Maxi is broken. I personally feel like it's broken, but then how do I put this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a villain? I feel like it's broken, but I know that it's gonna be in every deck that I run into, so I might as well play it myself, is the thing. Like, if it got banned, I wouldn't be mad. If it got limited, I wouldn't be mad, but for the time being, yeah, it just creates some crazy advantage scenarios, or it acts as a floodgate to stop your opponent's special summoning, because my opponent's really only alternative there was to stop short of a board that they felt could protect them, which just isn't a great way to feel. In any event, that's a tangent. So my opponent goes back to their turn. They start, doing their plays and everything. I actually misplayed slightly. I was talking while it happened. I thought I had an engage in the graveyard, which is the only reason that why I activated a Widow Anchor onto my Hayate, thinking that I hadn't engaged in the graveyard, so I wanted to try and get Sky Striker Mecha modules to be activatable, because I drew into it very, very late in the turn, so I was like, okay, if I activate this Widow Anchor now on a card whose effect I no longer need, then I can get that engage out of the graveyard, forgetting that I hadn't actually used engage that turn. But then Shizuku Search went out for me in the end phase, so it's fine. And we got it right back with Mecha modules. It is annoying because now it's going to be banished when it leaves the field, but realistically speaking, it doesn't matter. Now, my opponent really wants to get rid of my multi-roll, right? They really want to get rid of it, but I've got this card in hand, the Rabbit Ogre, Ogre Rabbit, Ghost Ogre Snow Rabbit. My opponent tried to activate the face-up continuous trap, and because they did that, I could destroy it. A continuous trap needs to be face-up on the field to resolve its effect, so by not being on the field, we effectively negated the effect of the trap. They get a Shinshin on the field once more. That's all good and fine. They go for a Vermilion Dragon Mech. They really want to get rid of my multi-roll. They target it again to try and slow my roll, mess me up a little bit. This time I decided to use the Effect Veiler in hand. I could have used the Anchor to yoink the card, but what I'm thinking is, okay, if I use Anchor, so this is some very linear thinking on my part, right? Because if I use Anchor, I can negate the effect without stealing my opponent's monster, but I'm trying to be conservative here. I'm trying to be conservative and save my Anchor, so I decided to use a card in hand instead. My opponent activates Lulu, and here's where I make a misplay actually. Now, if a virtual world card tries to summon itself by using a card on the field and you destroy that card on the field, you effectively negate the summon. Now, I thought that the same logic might apply if I stole the monster on the field, but the monster is still on the field, so the effect still resolves, the monster still gets special summon, and now I've clogged up my board, so my back row isn't currently activatable. I'm a little bit stuck, unfortunately, but my opponent can't really get through everything that I have here, right? There's just too much. There's too much for them to play through with what I've got on the board. Now, they're going to activate the Virtual World Gate to negate the effect of Shizuku. That way their attack stops being reduced. But I've stolen the biggest attack monster that they're going to be making here, so it doesn't really matter all that much. They can't get over their own Shinshin. My opponent goes into a Phoenix. That way they can finally get rid of multi-roll. I don't know why they hated it so much, but they also get rid of Ray in the graveyard, so I can't float. Good play on their end. right? Now, I'm here thinking that they're about to go into a Zeus play, and I'm 100% ready for it, right? If my opponent goes into a Zeus play, they would wipe the entire field, including their own cards, which then, I mean, I've got a Raigeki in hand, and I've gotten engaged, so I'm prepared for that, but they choose not to go that route. End phase comes around. Maybe they chose not to go that route because they didn't want to lose their own cards, or maybe they just didn't have Zeus in their deck, whatever the case. My turn rolls around, and it's an instant Raigeki. Like, you don't think twice about it. We wipe the entire field of all of their monsters. Now, Vermilion Dragon Mech can get a banish monster back to your hand, yada yada. Again, at this stage in the game, we're in such control of the duel that it doesn't matter all that much. We use Engage's effect to get ourselves another copy of Shark Cannon. We get to draw a card in its effect failure. Now, my opponent, I feel like, has started to slow down in terms of they're preempting my moves because they did not activate this face down card the way that they did last time, right? Which means that I'm able to target it with my Sky Striker maneuvers over here to destroy it while it's still face down. They flip it up in response and they target their virtual world gate. Now, I think they're low on resources. At first I thought that this was a misplay because that means this isn't going to be on the field anymore, but no, it's actually a solid play because it lets them recycle their banished cards back into the deck, and they've got quite a few things banished, so they're getting themselves some resources back and sending this to the graveyard, and that means next turn they can use its effect in the graveyard to gain some advantage. Ray hits the field. I'm going to do the exact same thing, activate its effect. I chain it, and then we go through summon a monster onto the field. We get a search out of the deck at no cost, which is really, really cool. Kagari hits the field because we send it back into the deck with our pot card, and we're just... It's complete control from here on out. I don't feel like there's much more that needs to be said in the situation. You can kind of imagine exactly where this is going, right? I'm prepared for everything. Oh, and I got Rose on the field too. Like, I've got everything that I need at my disposal. If I want to, well, to be fair, I don't think I have lethal from my the current range that I'm at, so I decided to make some interesting plays here. I'm trying to climb, right? And don't get me wrong, I can hear you saying it already. Did you really just use those two cards to make a chicken, the Phoenix chicken? Yes, I did, but the reason for that is I wanted to get two cards on the field, link two, that way I could activate the effect of Mobilize to get myself a card that I'd be able to activate with no monsters on the field, right? I'm trying to link climb here. I'm trying to do something that I feel like you'll find kind of interesting. I go for a link 3, Nightmare Unicorn hits the field, I do not activate its effect, and then I activate Shark Cannon once again. I run this card at 2 because it's just so good. Now I'm thinking to myself, do I keep their Shinshin? Do I keep it so that they can't use it next turn? And I think, no, actually, I have confidence in the play that I want to make, so I don't need to keep their Shinshin. I get Access Code Talker on the field, and I boost the stack to 5k. Now you might be thinking, Access Code can't do anything on your opponent's turn. Why make Access Code? My opponent activates a virtual world gate, right? They activate another one of these, and this has the ability to negate the effects of one card on the field, which means that my access code would drop back to 2k. But there's a card, oh, and I have Maxi. But this card that's been face down for a while, is Eagle Booster. Now, I chain the activation of their card. I chain Eagle Booster to the activation of their card, and what this card says is, target one face-up monster on the field. That target is unaffected by card effects this turn except its own, so it's completely unaffected by everything, and it's indestructible by battle this turn because I've got all 3 spells in the graveyard, which means that I do not lose attack, and they have no way of getting my card off of the field. So I've got an indestructible, unaffected 5k beater. They can do whatever they want. They're not getting rid of this card, and in case they manage to get something that can beat over it, it can't be destroyed by battle, but I've also got myself another copy of Widow Anchor, right? So I can see the cogs in their head turning. They want to try and get into a VFD to try and negate my effects before I'm able to use my access code next turn and potentially recover that way. I can see, like, it's the only thing that makes sense in this situation from this range from them. Now this card is negated. They banished 2. The reason they didn't misplay, the reason why they activated that banish effect even though that they were negated was so that they could get their VFD back in their extra deck, right? Their True King of All Calamities. So they're going for a Cloud Castle to summon the level 9 in their graveyard in the form of Vermilion Dragon Mech, and this is where I say no. I Widow Anchor to negate the effect. The card that I choose to yoink is the Cloud Castle. If I negate Shinshin, I mean, they're still gonna summon a level 9 from the graveyard, and if I don't steal Cloud Castle, then they can still make the True King. So I just steal it right here, right now, negate the effect, and it's over. There's nothing that they can do, and they scoop. Funny enough, they actually lost because of the time limit. I didn't even realize that until now. But yeah, that's how we took on 2 True King of All Calamities and 1 back-to-back. Like, this is, it's just it's a fun, versatile deck. I'm a Sky Striker fan. You should be too. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, if you did, please remember to like it, subscribe to the channel, and bye.